respond.
Right.
The purpose of the KPIs in my mind is for us to run a more efficient ship.
Yeah.
We need our directors to understand what's happening with their staff and in their field. If they're not measuring it, it's not happening. So to say it's not worthwhile, I don't think is beneficial. Data is important, and it's just a matter of how we utilize that data. If we're collecting it just for the sake of collecting it, it's useless. But if we're actually doing something with that information, it's worth the investment and it's worth the value.
I agree with that. Councillor Ward.
I think what Steve's speaking to here speaks to a little bit more of a overall technology overhaul, because those KPIs and that type of input that you're like, you're wanting to collect can only be garnered and supported by a more robust IT system. Because right now those inputs are hard to collect. Now, I know that's in the process, but I'll throw that back to you because I know we have been cautioned in this meeting that there's limited IT resources available. To that, I challenge back that come to council with requests for the support required, and that we've usually been willing either to change our opinion on what we require based on resources or try and help you, the administration, find those resources. So yes, I think we're all pretty aware of the staffing requirements, but I think we're going to need that stronger IT system throughout in order to get the type of data. And I agree with Steve on KPIs. If they're used right, it makes sense. Looking at your questions here, I have a hard time identifying specific points offhand of data that we're missing. I think when we ask in meetings, when we ask these questions, that's when the data points kind of come up. So I have a hard time offhand being like, hey, we're missing A, B, C, and D. I think what we're missing is some performance metrics, but I would be more willing to see if HR has ideas for that.
Councillor Adams, your mic's still on?
Yeah, Mike's still on. I'm still thinking.
Okay,
I'm trying to be polite.
okay.
Got it.
Give you 10 seconds to regroup here. Councillor Hughes.
I would agree with Councillor Ward in general as well. I think it's important to have it. I see the importance of data, especially in this leadership role. How can we make informed decisions if we don't have the data and, you know, the understanding behind it? So I do think that we should carry on with the quarterly reports at this point, and I can't identify a particular item that's missing right now, but I'd love to try to keep note or try to track them as we have meetings and continue to move forward with this process. Perhaps we can streamline it in that way.
That was my point.
Yeah.
They come up during the meetings.
Councillor Adams.
I would be fine with streamlining some of the data points if your directors feel that it's not an accurate or a beneficial measurement. But I would like to see the reasoning behind it. And then, like you say, when we're having these discussions and want more information from the table, to then say why we feel this point is valid and have that discussion with either the CAO or the director to do it. I mean, the KPI measurement, we're not trailblazers here. There's tens of thousands of communities that already do it, that I'm sure you could find in one quick search exactly what KPIs have been beneficial for which communities. And I'm not saying that it's a cookie cutter thing, but maybe that's a start.
Councillor Brandel.
So are you finding that the directors are just saying, okay, we're collecting this data, but why? Like,
And so I guess it comes down to how are we communicating or what are we doing with the data? I mean, it's important to have data. From a community services standpoint, we've collected data long before 2021 when it was put into a report. And I think in most of the areas that's what you find. Departments are collecting the data and they're using it to support other decisions that may not be public facing. A lot of the data that gets reported is actually reported as being fairly generic. We maintain X number of kilometers, we plowed X number of kilometers of roads this many times, right? We mowed grass and covered so many hectares or whatever, it's fairly generic. And that is actually what most municipalities report. We have looked at what other municipalities report. I think I'll just add another thing in here. Many years ago when I worked for another municipality, I actually sat on an AUMA committee around performance metrics and ways to compare apples to apples across municipalities. The project actually fell apart because every municipality does it a little differently. So that's the problem, is that trying to come up with there's no set industry standard.
Yeah, yeah, I'm not really that, I really don't care what other communities do. I just want to make us a more efficient. So maybe we can just look at the data that we do collect and why, what we're doing with it and refine that, like,
Yeah, absolutely.
instead of thinking of more.
That's
Yeah.
what Steve said too, is, you know, if there's data that directors are looking at and saying, why are we doing this? It's wasting time. I don't think the reports are necessary. I don't think anyone's going to miss them out to public, but I think the data for the internal decisions is important. Also, it also could be done every 6 months where maybe data points for the season, kind of like a great social media opportunity. Did you know we plowed this many roads, kilometers of roads? Did you know we did this much mowing? Just as a kind of like a service standard Q&A, like a Fact Tuesday. That might be horrible, but I'm just saying that type of, I would read that and go, oh, wow, look how many kilometers of roads
Are
we
you
did
making a
this.
motion to initiate Fact Tuesdays?
I need a better name than that. It's been a long day. That's a horrible name for that, but I'm sure our communications. We can workshop it. Okay, so you're telling me it's not a lost cause. Okay, good. Okay, I'll be quiet now.
Any other comments, questions, crazy days to have? No? Okay, motions. Counselor Brandel,
I move that we'll accept this for information.
discussion, no discussion, call to question those in favor. That is carried. Thank you, Gary. Moving on to correspondence. I trust you've all read this, or would you like me to read it to you? You read it? Okay, so what Shannon's looking for here is the rural communities aren't getting their fair shake, and they're looking for our three biggest economic issues in our region that we could give them. Is that something we want to discuss now, task administration with? You guys have ideas? Counselor Adams?
I would like to see us task it to administration, to be honest, to have that conversation and come back with a report.
I love that. Can you make that into a motion?
That's a motion.
Discussion. Do you ladies have that captured? Thank you. Discussion, call to question those in favor. That is carried. Mayor's Corner, he's not here. We'll move along from that.
Come on, step up.
I have no update to share. No deputy mayor update. They've heard me speak enough tonight.
I was gonna be disappointed in you.
You were gonna be disappointed in me?
I was gonna be disappointed in you.
Well, we do have the new CAO starting next week. That's exciting.
Awesome.
For the town and our staff. I know Gary put in a lot of, I don't want to say blood, sweat and tears, but this guy worked very hard for the organization. And we all really appreciate what you did, Gary. And we're happy we have you till at least September and hope we have a long lasting relationship after that where we could use you when we need you. So, yeah. So that's a good update, I guess. Anyway, looking for some adjournment. Counselor Adams makes that
Motion to
motion.
adjourn.
Call to question those in favor.